Welcome back everyone, it's Vaz again with another video from World of Warships Legends. And today we have another versus for you. In versus we compare two similar and readily available ships to determine if one is better than the other. We'll tally the points up as we go, and at the end we hope to determine a winner. We'll also throw in a little bit of information and some tips on the builds and playstyles of the ships. And today we do have a fun one. It's the battle of the German Tier 7 cruisers, the Prinz Eugen and Admiral Hipper. The Hipper can be researched in the tech tree, while the Eugen costs 750,000 global XP. Since both ships are the exact same class, the Hipper class, we should expect them to be extremely similar, right? Well, let's find out. First off, we'll start with some info on the ships. The Hipper was the lead ship in her class and was commissioned in 1939, while the Prinz Eugen was the third ship in the Hipper class and was commissioned in 1940. Before we jump into the stats of these ships, let's talk about the playstyles first. These ships are indeed very versatile and can be set up to play at all ranges, although you may find yourself having more success at mid-range. As for the commander choice for these ships, I've been experimenting with Azure Lane Hipper lately, but I realize not everyone has her, so I won't recommend her. If you do have a question about her, let me know in the comments down below and I'll answer the best that I can. And as you can see by my Von Mueller, I have never ever used him, as he was one of the final commanders I ever unlocked, and I had already started to level up Luchans. So although I hear Von Mueller is the more popular choice, I am going to recommend my man Gunther Luchans. I go with the mobility build. My skill choice in slot 1 is Ingenious for the warning indicator and the increase in turret traverse speed. In slot 2, I choose full speed ahead for the extra speed and rudder shift. In slot 3, it's Velocious for extra speed. And in slot 4, it's Steer Clear for the rudder shift again. As for the legendary skill, I choose Fully Packed, which gives you an extra consumable charge. Now when it comes to inspirations, there are two reasons for my inspiration choices. One, I want to take advantage of Luchan's only offensive skill, which happens to be his base trait, in order to maximize its usefulness. And two, I want my shots to count when I take them. Therefore I choose Scott and Yamamoto for accuracy and AP penetration. Other possible inspiration options could be Mbeli for reload time, Kuznetsov for range, or Fraser for speed, unless of course your Von Mueller is at a decent level, then I choose him over Fraser. So now let's move over to the ship upgrades and modifications. In slot 1, I see no reason to choose anything other than aiming systems on most ships, so I choose it for both of these ships as well. In slot 2, I've chosen steering gears for both ships in order to get that rudder shift down as low as possible to help with the ship's agility. In slot 3, just like slot 2, I've chosen steering gears again for both ships to get that rudder shift down to a minuscule number. It really does help with that agility build. Now in slot 4, it does look a little overwhelming at first, but really it just comes down to the range versus the reduced reload time. I like the reduced reload time on my cruisers for better DPM, so I choose the main battery mod. Okay, it's points time now. Let's move over to the loadout screen. The Eugen has the option of a reload booster, but it's hard to call that an advantage because if you choose that, you lose out on the sonar, which the Hipper always has. The choice really comes down to your playstyle and experience. I'd only recommend ditching the sonar for the reload booster if you're confident in your abilities to hunt down destroyers without the aid of sonar. Now as you can see, the Eugen's repair party heals an extra 8 hit points per second, which over the course of 2 base heals equals only 448 extra hit points, which I mean, come on, there are tier 7 battleships that have secondaries will damage you more than that in one salvo, so it's not really much of an advantage, although we are going to put a pin in that until our next screen, which is Survivability. The Eugen does have 1200 more hit points, and combined with that greater heal from the previous screen, that gives it a decent enough advantage, so we're going to give it a point for having a larger health pool since the difference is almost a couple of thousand now. We'll save the armor for the armor viewer, and the torp belts are identical. Next up is the artillery screen. Now here's the reason for this versus. The Hipper got a buff during a recent patch, which lowered its reload time and increased its HE and AP shell damage, while the Eugen received no buffs at all. So where do we give out points? We don't want to double up on anything, so we're simply going to give the Hipper a point for a better reload time, and a second point for better DPM, which will combine HE and AP shell damage. Next up, let's take a look at the Torpedoes. These two have differences as well. The launchers, the reload time, and the damage are all the same, but the Eugen does have a very slight stealth advantage of 100 meters, but hey, that's not really a big difference. However, the extra 2-kilometer range is indeed a big advantage, and that nets the Eugen another point. The Hipper, however, counters with an extra 4 knots of speed on its torps, which is a pretty decent difference, and that nets it a counterpoint. Next up, we have the anti-aircraft defense screen. For some reason, the Hipper has an extra 2 20mm AA guns, which probably don't do jack of a difference in the grand scheme of things, so this is going to be a big old tie. Now let's maneuver on over to maneuverability. I do love saying that. The Hipper has an ever so slightly better turning circle and a 1/10 of a second better rudder. Of course, these numbers have been skewed by my mod choices, so they aren't exactly stock, but they still are comparable since my choices are the same for both ships. Anyways, the Eugen was actually a couple of 100 meters longer in real life, so it makes sense that it's a little less maneuverable, but it's not enough to make a big enough difference to give the Hipper any points. We see a similar trend with Concealment. The slightly smaller Hipper is slightly less detectable, but there's barely a difference, so we'll just move on to the armor viewer. Now as for the armor, it's nearly identical on both ships, as you'd expect. I did go through them one by one to be thorough, and I found that the Hipper was armored a little better in 3 places, and that the Eugen was armored a little better in 3 places. Why? I don't know, man. Let's just move on to the summary. So here we go. The Prinz Eugen gets 2 points, one for a larger hit point pool, and a second for better torpedo range. Being that it's a premium ship, it does have increased credit earnings, but that just gets an asterisk since it doesn't affect gameplay. And the Hipper gets 3 points, one for a better reload time, one for better damage per minute, and one for better torpedo speed. It also has a reduced ship service cost for whatever reason. Wargaming has reduced Tech Tree Tier 7 ship service costs while leaving premium ship service costs the same, but again, that just gets an asterisk because it doesn't affect gameplay. This matchup was very tight and the advantages of each were quite close as well. But details aside, it's clear that through the buffs it's received, the Hipper will be your go-to Tier 7 German cruiser. Just watch out for those battleship HE shells. Wink wink. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, if you did like that video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. Be sure to leave a comment down below and let me know which ship you like the best. Hit that subscribe button to see more of my videos. And as always, stay healthy and do what makes you happy.